My name's Katie Owens. I'm the Upper Coosa Program Director for the Nature Conservancy here in Georgia. And today I want to tell you a little bit about what the Nature Conservancy does across Northwest Georgia and then specifically at Marshall Forest. So I'm going to start by describing this map here. So this map shows the entire Upper Coosa watershed. The Upper Coosa watershed essentially drains all of the water in Northwest Georgia. So if you're looking at the map, everything in white is highlighting the Upper Coosa watershed. And then if you zoom in, you'll see this purple area here. That's called the Conservancy watershed. It actually starts in Northwest Georgia, flows north into Tennessee, and then you can see dips back down heading south back into Georgia again. So the Conservancy is a well-known watershed here for the major biodiversity that you find within the river. In addition to the Conservancy River, we also have the Etowah River watershed. So the Upper Coosa has three headwater systems, the Conservancy, the Coosawhattie, and the Etowah. The two that the Nature Conservancy work the most in are the Conservancy and the Etowah watershed, and that's because that's where we have the most biodiversity. And when I say biodiversity, I mean fish and mussels and all the aquatic animals that you find in the river. So we have these two river systems that we're heavily focused in. We're working on all different types of aquatic restoration projects to try to improve habitat for those fish and mussel species, and a lot of our time and work goes to those watersheds. But in addition to the watersheds, the Nature Conservancy also has major terrestrial areas that we target in the Upper Coosa watershed. So looking back at our map, if you look at these dark green areas all scattered across the map, those are either owned by the state, known as wildlife management areas, or they're known as federal areas like the Chattahoochee National Forest. So we have major state lands and major federal lands across Northwest Georgia. And the Nature Conservancy works very closely with both the state and our federal partners on these terrestrial lands. We might help with timber harvest, we help with habitat restoration, we help with tree replanting efforts. So all different kinds of things that benefit all of our species that are found all over these lands. Particularly in Northwest Georgia, I want to focus in on Rome today. So in our Rome area, we have two of our aquatic systems coming together. We have the Oostanala River and we have the Etowah River that come together in downtown Rome to form the Coosa River. And then as you go out the Coosa River, you'll see a little dot here that's marked as the Marshall Forest Preserve. So the Nature Conservancy actually has two preserves here in Floyd County, Marshall Forest and Black's Bluff, which are both preserves that protect listed plants. But today we're going to focus specifically in and talk about Marshall Forest, which again is just down the Coosa River, located right off the banks of the Coosa River on a little bluff. So right now I'm standing on the Braille Trail in Marshall Forest. Marshall Forest is a preserve that the Nature Conservancy has. It's just over 300 acres located right off the banks of the Coosa River in Rome, Georgia. One of the things that Marshall Forest is most well known for is it's home to one of the largest populations of the large flowered skullcap, scientific name Scutellaria montana. So it's part of the perennial herb mint family, and it has some really nice populations not far from where we're standing here today. So there are over 300 different types of plant species that are found within the forest, 55 different tree species. Marshall Forest has several trail systems located throughout our preserve. Today we're standing on the Braille Trail. So the Braille Trail is a very small trail loop, and it's located right off of Horseleg Creek Road, and you can walk the loop in less than a half a mile. And what's important about the loop is it was actually created as a blind trail. So we actually have legitimate braille located all along the Braille Trail that tells you about the history of Marshall Forest and talks a little bit about some of the plant and tree species that you'll find as you walk the Braille Trail loop. Now, in addition to the Braille Trail loop, which is located in relatively flat lowlands of Marshall Forest, we also have several trail systems that are located up higher on the ridge. So one that's easy to access from our Marshall Forest parking lot is known as the Dorsey Trail. So instead of beginning at the Braille Trail, you can walk up the mountain towards the Dorsey Trail. And the Dorsey Trail, similar to the Braille Trail, is also a loop, but it's over a mile long and provides some really great views of Rome throughout the wintertime. So at Marshall Forest, we have several trail systems, and the trail systems are very well used by the public. There's several miles in Marshall Forest Preserve alone, and it's really important to the Nature Conservancy that we partner with the local community in order to keep those trails open. Marshall Forest is a great example of how the local community helps us with the trail systems. So right here we have our latest new Eagle Scout project, where we had an Eagle Scout here in Rome that came in and put post and new rope throughout a portion of our Braille Trail, and it's really important that we have these partnerships with the Boy Scouts and other local community organizations to help the Nature Conservancy keep these trails up and running. So I'm the only local biologist that's located in Northwest Georgia, so I really depend on the community members to help me with maintenance of these trails. I do have a fire crew that is in Rome for 4 months of each year, and during those 4 months my crew comes out and we do a good bit of trail maintenance, taking down debris that has fallen in the trails, clearing it out and making it safe to walk. But outside of those 4 months, I really have to depend on the local community to let me know what's happening in the Braille Trail, what's happening in the Dorsey Trail, what needs to happen in each of those trail systems to keep them open, safe for the public. And the Boy Scouts and other organizations have been incredibly helpful over the years, and we hope to continue those partnerships. We have additional projects that need to happen still in Marshall Forest, so we have more work that needs to be done on the Braille Trail. We have a bridge that needs to be replaced. We need to put more climbing rope up to assist the blind making their way through the actual trail, and we always need to do cleanups to keep trash and other debris off of our trail system and Horseleg Creek Road. So the Nature Conservancy has owned the Marshall Forest Preserve since the 1970s, when it was donated to the Nature Conservancy. And it was donated because of the forest that's found within the preserve. So again, it's over 300 acres. And what's most unique about the forest is it's considered an old growth forest, and it's an old growth forest within the city limits of Rome. So finding an old growth forest within a city limit is pretty rare. If you look around us today, you'll see all different types of hardwood and pine trees. And again, there's over 55 different tree species found within Marshall Forest. So why do we have 55 tree species? And why do we have 300 species of different plants within the forest? Well, there's really two big reasons. One is during different weather events, for example, ice storms, there's different trees that fell and they created open canopies. And when we had those gaps, we had different tree species and plant species that were able to colonize within those open gaps. So that created additional biodiversity within Marshall Forest. But in addition to the weather events, something that's very important really across the United States that we don't see too much of today is fire. So fire would have been a natural component to Marshall Forest Preserve, and what would have happened is we would have had a lightning strike in the area. That lightning strike would have burnt Marshall Forest in addition to thousands of other acres around Marshall Forest. So today we don't see many acres, especially hundreds or thousands of acres burning. When we do have lightning strikes, we usually quickly put them out. And where we don't have lightning strikes, historically we would have had Native Americans and early settlers that would have actually been lighting burns, similar to what we call prescribed burns, which they would have been doing on purpose to create different habitat for different species and to help them promote animal habitat. But today we limit fire. In Marshall Forest, if you look around us, you'll see there's not many open gaps. There's not many large trees that have fallen. That's because we really haven't had fire in a long time in Marshall Forest, and you'll see a lack of specific species of trees coming back up. So from the 70s to today, and even before the 70s, we've seen a lot of different changes in the tree species. So when you have fire in Northwest Georgia, we have fire tolerant species. For example, behind me we have the shortleaf pine tree. A shortleaf pine tree, in addition to what we call the longleaf pine tree, are both fire tolerant species. Those are species that have evolved and they actually do well with fire. So the more fire you have come through Marshall Forest, maybe every 3 years, maybe every 7 years, the more open habitat that's going to be created, nutrients are going to be turned back into the ground, and you're going to have different pine species and oak species, other hardwood species that are able to recolonize gaps and resprout. So over time, we've basically lost species in Marshall Forest because of the lack of some weather events and because of the lack of fire within the forest. So one thing the Nature Conservancy is doing is we're looking at, can we return fire to different portions of Marshall Forest and broader across Northwest Georgia. So we actively have a fire team that lives in Rome, Georgia, 4 months out of the year. We do burn all over Northwest Georgia, and we hope to one day put some fire in small patches in Marshall Forest. So it is a challenge given we are on Horseleg Creek Road and we have areas surrounding Marshall Forest that are definitely sensitive to fire. So we'd have to reintroduce fire in very, very small amounts. But if we want the forest to actually represent a true historic old growth forest and have the diversity of pine and oak and other hardwood species that would have naturally been here, then the forest has to have fire. It has to have the natural components that would have helped these species regenerate. A project that we hope to complete here in the next year at the Nature Conservancy is replacing this wooden bridge here in Marshall Forest. So both the Boy Scouts and the garden clubs here locally have been amazing partners in helping us raise funds and do different projects throughout the forest. This is one of the major next projects that we really need to complete. So our bridge is slowly starting to rot away, and so we'd love to see another Boy Scout troop or local community organization that can come and help us with bringing in some wood and replacing this bridge so we can continue to actively use our Braille Trail throughout Marshall Forest. So there are 55 different tree species found within Marshall Forest, but I want to talk to you for a few minutes about some of the pine trees. So behind me we have what's called the shortleaf pine tree, but the tree species that I really want to talk to you about is called the longleaf pine tree. The longleaf pine is found up on the Dorsey Trail, and most people have heard of the longleaf pine trees, but here in Marshall Forest we have a very special kind of longleaf pine tree. It's called the mountain or montane longleaf tree. So mountain longleaf pine is only found in Northwest Georgia and Northeast Alabama. It has a very small range, and just like the name suggests, it's only found in the mountains. So it's only found in pretty steep areas, and it's incredible that it's right here in our Marshall Forest. Now, what's unique about the montane longleaf tree is the mountain longleaf ecosystem has evolved with fire. So if we have fires, the montane longleaf or mountain longleaf does very well over time. If we take away fire, then the mountain longleaf is not able to reproduce. We don't have gaps and canopies that are created for the longleaf to actually shoot up and grow and do well. So in Marshall Forest, although we have a really nice population of this huge shortleaf pine and our mountain longleaf along the Dorsey Trail, those species are both going to die out over time unless we have gaps that are created across the Marshall Forest Preserve in order for these species to be able to put down new seedlings and grow and do well. So the Nature Conservancy has thousands of acres of forest and creeks and rivers that we maintain all over the state of Georgia. Here in Floyd County, we just have Marshall Forest and Black's Bluff, which is just several hundred acres, but it's very important to be able to maintain those, to have our partnerships with the local community. So there's kind of two pieces of the puzzle. One, we need to be able to come out and keep our trails maintained. We need to keep them clean. We need to remove debris from the actual trails and make sure our Braille Trail posts are staying up to date, not rotting away, make sure our bridges are doing well. So if you're interested in volunteering to help maintain the trail systems, you can look at our website, which is nature.org. We have volunteer events that are posted on nature.org where you can identify different days to come out and work on the trail systems and help us improve the actual trail system. So this is 300 acres here at Marshall Forest that the community is able to come out and enjoy anytime, and we would love to have you come and use the forest from dawn to dusk, but we also would love to have your assistance in keeping these trails maintained. In addition to maintaining the trails, there's always cost of upkeep, so if you're interested in donating to the Nature Conservancy, you've heard a lot about what we do in Marshall Forest and beyond, so we're really protecting the biodiversity that's found within Marshall Forest as well as the rest of these important sites across Northwest Georgia. So the best way to donate to the Nature Conservancy is to go to nature.org, and there's actually a donate section available on that website where you can give money to help protect this 300 acres as well as all of the thousands of acres that the Nature Conservancy works to protect for you guys to enjoy on a daily basis.